Today we're going to have a look at complementary and supplementary angles, what they are and how we can use them. So, a complementary angle, these are two angles that share the same vertex, that's the corner, and they sum, and remember sum means to add, they sum to 90 degrees. So first of all, here is an angle that's 90 degrees. Now remember, it can be in all different orientations, so it can be rotated around to look different ways, but it's still a right angle. So we learnt that last time. And what we're going to have a look at now is we're going to split that up into two angles. Now you can see that that was our original 90 degrees. So that means that if I turned this far and then I turned the rest of the way, I can work out how far I turned here and how far I turned there. So what we're going to have a look at is if I knew that this last bit of turning was 60 degrees, then what was the first amount of turning that I actually did? Or if I started the other way and I turned 60 degrees, stopped, and then turned the rest of the way, how far was this last bit of turning? Well, I know that the two of them add up to 90 degrees. So if I add the two of the angles together, it'll be 90 degrees. And if I subtract 60 from both sides, then I know that that last bit is 30 degrees. So these two angles are complementary because they sum to 90 degrees. I could also ask the question, what is the complement of 60 degrees? When I ask for the complement, then that's just the other angle that we use to add up to 90 degrees. So the complement of 60 degrees is 30 degrees. So those two angles add up to 90 degrees. Supplementary angles are the next type. So these are two angles, again, that share the same vertex or corner, and this time they add up to 180 degrees. So here's a straight angle, turned 180 degrees. All right. So I'm going to cut that up into two, and I've already labelled them here. So I've turned 130 degrees. How much more do I need to turn to face the opposite direction I started off with, which is a full 180 degrees? Well, when I add these two angles together, they should add up to 180 degrees. And then if I subtract 130 from both sides, I get that that extra bit of angle there is 50 degrees. So these two angles are supplementary because they add up to 180 degrees. That means the supplement of 130 degrees is that 50 degrees, which makes a total of 180. All right, so that leads us to the next part. Once we know those basic facts, then vertically opposite angles is our next part. When two straight lines meet, there's actually four angles that are created. So there's one straight line. Let's put in another one. And we can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 angles that are created there. Well, I'm going to say that if I measured that, and I turned from there around to there, I've turned 140 degrees. So remember, this is a straight line here, and we have another straight line there. So what happens if we cover up part of that? So it just makes it a bit easier to see. There's our straight line. We know that these two angles in a straight line must add up to 180 degrees because they're supplementary. So that must mean 140. What do I have to add to it to get 180? Well, subtract 140 from 180, and I should find that that angle is 40 degrees. So recall that this is a straight line here. What I'm going to do is, just to make it a bit easier, is cover up this part here so you can see. So straight line, these are supplementary, they add up to 180. So what do I have to add to 40 to get 180? Well, 180 minus that 40, and that will give us 140 degrees there. And similarly, if we have a look at this straight line, this angle plus this angle must add up to 180. and you should see what's going to happen. If that's 140, 180 minus 140 will tell us the size of this angle here, which happens to be 40 degrees. Now if you have a look, you can see something here. When two straight lines meet, what do you notice about the opposite ones? Well, we can see that the opposite angles are equal, and we call these vertically opposite, even though sometimes they might not actually be vertical, because we can rotate these lines around so that they all look in different orientations. So these are horizontal lines or angles here, but we just call them vertically opposite angles just to keep things simple and the same. So there we have vertically opposite angles are equal. So there are three different types of angles we've had a look at today: complementary, supplementary, and vertically opposite. Remember, complementary comes first alphabetically before supplementary, and 90 comes before 180. So that's an easy way to try and remember complementary and supplementary, what they add to. And our vertically opposite angles here are equal.